Here, near the German border in the town of Hamburg, Belgium, lies one of the last presses operated as a part-time farm. This is the Markiehof farm, where we will watch the production of fruit syrup, used in Kraut. The syrup sweetener, particularly popular in the Rhineland, is called fruit Kraut. Usually made from fruit juice syrup, or sugar beets. Large orchards are characteristic of the East Belgium landscape. They provide the basis for rural syrup cooking. The owners of the Markiehof farm, where syrup has been cooked for 3 generations, is currently harvesting the ripe fruit. To ensure the fruit, which will be used unwashed, remains mostly clean, several linen sacks and a large tarp are spread out under the fruit trees, and a long pole with an iron hook is used to shake the fruit loose. The fruit that falls from the shaking is picked up and collected in baskets. The so-called Wallonian plum baskets are around 35 centimeters high and have a volume of 30 liters. For this farm's recipe, 2/3 pears and 1/3 apples and plums are used for cooking. The addition of plums is a specialty of the syrup cooker and serves to refine the flavor. While the mixture can vary slightly depending on the harvest, 2/3 pears is the rule. The harvested fruit is transported to the farm and can be processed there.
Nee, die moest doormaken. Zo?
The farm has a separate outbuilding that houses the cabbage cooking system. The fruit is then unloaded and carried to the barn. The oven is installed in the right-hand corner, on which the kettle with lightly boiling fruit is already standing. The fruit is placed unwashed into the large kettle. An important prerequisite for good cabbage is that the fruit becomes soft, but does not boil down to a paste. The round cooking kettle is made of brass and has 2 handles. It has a diameter of 1.20 centimeters and a height of almost 80 centimeters. The copper base is slightly recessed towards the center. Copper is used because it conducts heat well and is corrosion resistant. The kettle holds almost a cubic meter. Once the kettle is filled to the top, the fruit is covered with several linen sheets. This allows the heat to build up in the kettle, making it easier to cook the fruit until soft. Wood must be added again and again. The entire cooking process requires 1.5 to 2 cubic meters of wood. In this case, scrap wood is used. The soft boiling process takes 5 to 6 hours, depending on the amount of fruit and the heating system. The cooker checks the kettle contents regularly. At the beginning of the cooking process, 70 liters of water are poured over the fruit to facilitate soft cooking. If necessary, a little more fruit juice is added. For this purpose, he uses the fruit juice left over from a previous pressing. Once it is cooked soft, it remains in the kettle over a low heat until the next morning, as hot fruit pulp is easier to press out. There is a roof hatch above the oven through which the steam escapes. The next morning, the soft boiled fruit, along with the juice that has already been released, is transferred to the press. The tarps that were used to cover the fruit are now removed and hung over a pole to drain. The old wooden press, dating from 1894, consists of a tub, the actual pressing device, and a collecting tray with a drain. After every 2 buckets of fruit pulp, a tarp is placed in the tub. This serves to filter the pressed fruit juice and provide more stability to the entire pressing process. pure fruit juice collects in the 80-liter juice kettle located below the outlet. This is repeatedly poured into a large barrel to keep the juice kettle clear. The soft-boiled fruit has now collapsed considerably. The hot mass is distributed as evenly as possible in the press tub and covered with linen sacks. To facilitate pouring the liquid into the boiling kettle, the kettle is lifted from the furnace with a crane. This crane is permanently installed on the wall of the barn. A few ladles of juice are used to loosen the remaining fruit pulp from the bottom and walls. The kettle is cleaned with water and a brush. It must be cleaned very thoroughly to ensure that no fruit residue gets into the kettle during the boiling process. This prevents contamination and reduces the risk of burning. The fruit juice is then poured back into the kettle. The rectangular sieve is made of copper. The cheesecloth placed inside the copper sieve is a coarse mesh kitchen towel. It retains suspended particles from the juice. It must be rinsed several times in a bucket of cold water during the filtering process. The oven is built into the floor of the barn. The round fire has a diameter of 1.20 meters. A multi-step brick staircase leads down to the fire door. Waste wood is used for the fire. Leftovers from sweeping, i.e. trimming, the hedges, is used as kindling. In the past, people used railway briquettes for stoking. Due to the higher calorific value of the briquettes, they only needed half the cooking time. Today, however, this fuel is too expensive and makes its use unprofitable for part-time operations. The cooker seals the gap between the kettle bottom and the fire bowl with sand. This sealing is important for proper draft in the oven. Once the fruit mass in the tub has settled somewhat, 3 pressing blocks are placed on top. The blocks, at least 3 to 4 centimeters thick, are cut to completely fill the 80 centimeter diameter of the tub. The pressure created by the weight of the pressing blocks causes more fruit juice to flow out. Additional squared pieces of timber are then placed as evenly as possible on top of the pressing blocks. Once the required height has been reached, the spindle can turn. Pressing takes about 2 to 3 hours, with additional pressing every 15 minutes. In this way, 500 kilograms of fruit yields 300 liters of juice. Wood must be added continuously to ensure a fire. Boiling the juice down takes about 7 to 8 hours. In this time, 300 liters of juice thickens into 60 to 70 kilograms of syrup. This means that 100 kilograms of fruit yields an average of 12 to 14 kilograms of cabbage. The spindle is screwed down again and again. The longer the pressing is carried out, the less juice comes out and the harder it is to press, which is why the cooker uses a longer rod as a lever. The gently boiling fruit juice must Be stirred now and then to prevent it from burning. Stirring is continuous for the last hour of cooking. After about 3 hours, the press is released again. After screwing up the spindle, the cooker takes the individual pressing sticks out of the vat. The tub, which stands in the zinc-lined collecting tray, is removed and tipped backwards onto the tray. Between the linen sacks are the press residues, called kettle, which are fed to the cattle. In the 19th century, kraut was one of the most important foods, especially for the lower social classes. It was valued as a tasty and, above all, inexpensive. A difference emerged over the decades through the production of more expensive fruit kraut. Many families had beetroot kraut on weekdays and fruit kraut on Sundays. In the post-war period of the 20th century, kraut was a sought-after object of exchange and trade. Meanwhile, the fruit juice continues to boil down. Not only the 70 liters of water must evaporate, but also the liquid contained in the juice. The cooker sells his finished product on the farm, thus supplying no middlemen. He offers the syrup in tin cans, into which the desired amount is poured. After about 8 hours, the gelling test takes place. The cooker fills some of the syrup into the tasting bowl and places it in a bucket of cold water to cool. After a few minutes, they check the consistency of the herb. Determining the right consistency requires a lot of experience. If the syrup cools too much, it solidifies. Therefore, transferring it to the stews must also be done quickly. Once the cooker has determined the right consistency, the syrup can be moved. For this purpose, they use Seltner and Langer Weir stews. These storage vessels made of salt-glazed stoneware are rust brown in color and hold about 35 liters or 70 pounds of syrup. To prevent the stews from bursting when the hot syrup is added, they are first preheated in the still hot oven. After the kettle has been removed from the fire by crane, it is left to stand on the floor for 15 minutes. Then the steam has dissipated and the syrup is transferred. The cooker uses a saucepan to scoop the syrup from the boiling kettle into a bowl. To ensure none of the product is wasted, he places a brass drip guard over the rim of the kettle. This cooking is hard work. Pouring the fruit pulp into the press, the pressing itself and the bottling process take a lot of time and effort. The work, which the syrup cooker performs alone, takes a total of 2 days. This cooking, especially in part-time farming, is purely men's work. The stirring spoon consists of a wooden stick shaped like a spatula. The fruit syrup presented here has been boiled down without added sugar. In contrast, the Rheinische applesauce available today may contain up to 25% sugar. Kraut, whether beetroot or fruit kraut, has recently enjoyed great popularity again, after being almost completely forgotten after the Second World War.